Home alarm systems, something many people install for added security. But city officials say the cost of responding to false alarms has turned into a serious issue, draining resources that could be going to real emergencies. Tonight, KSN's Ashley Arnold spoke to officials from the city and alarm companies to find out the true cost and who's really footing the bill.
It's a simple problem with a hefty price tag.
About $2.5 million a year.
$2.5 million to respond to home and business alarms in Wichita. But how many of those are real?
98% of those alarms are false.
It's a serious concern for law enforcement that affects how many officers are out on the street responding to real emergencies.
You can see there's a big portion of our response time that is used up, where we want to shrink that down.
Whether it's a motion sensor that's triggered by an animal or a mechanical error, false alarms are a costly problem for Wichita.
System okay.
Something Bob Collins, who owns AmeriSafe Alarms, understands.
The goal of the alarm company should be to reduce false alarms to as close to zero as we can possibly get them.
The numbers paint a clear picture. Last year, there were 18,461 alarm calls to Wichita Fire or Police in 2013. Of that, only 659 were true alarms, only 4%.
The city, just like most municipalities, they're not rolling in money, and it's quite expensive for them to respond to an alarm, whether it's real or false.
So who pays to respond to those calls?
Well, sure, it's taxpayer money.
Whether you have an alarm system or ever had a false alarm, you're paying for the cost to respond. So less than 10% of people or businesses in Wichita that have alarm systems. But who should really be feeling the financial burden?
If the false alarm was truly the fault of the alarm company, then the alarm company should step up and pay the bill.
But other alarm companies aren't so sure.
Money does not solve all problems.
Steve Shapiro with ADT says the responsibility should be on the homeowner to make sure the system is maintained and working properly.
And there's other things that can be done besides just moving money around, because that's not going to solve it. It needs to be solved at the front end.
To recoup their costs, the city does charge those who are responsible for false alarms. The first is free, then $40 all the way up to $350 with police, and $100 for fire departments, all the way up to $750 for repeat offenders. But it's a cost that doesn't add up to some.
When it happens to me, I set the false alarm on, the police come, ask me who, this your business, blah, 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 and they gone. I mean, I don't see $3 million. It doesn't take but 5 minutes when they show up.
The city says it took in $700,000 in alarm fees last year, just a portion of the $2.5 million it cost them to respond to those calls. Having the right to not respond is something the city is considering.
They run up a big bunch of them. The city should have the right to not respond any longer. It is an expense to the city.
We're committing resources that could be used elsewhere for public safety. That includes fire and police response, and so we want to limit that and shrink down that issue so that it's not as a problem.
Police and fire departments understand it's their job to respond to calls, and at the end of the day, your safety is their priority.
Whether it's a false alarm or it's a true burglary in progress or anything in that nature. That's what we do.
Ashley Arnold, KSN News.
All right, thank you, Ashley. The Wichita Police Department will bring up possible changes to the ordinance to the City Council for consideration in June. In the meantime, how do the penalties for false alarms in other Kansas cities compare to Wichita? Andover is fairly lenient. You get 6 free false alarms a year, then it will cost you $10 for each one after that. In Dodge City, you get 1 free false alarm a month, and then you'll have to pay $25 after that. Hutchinson, you get 3 false alarms per month, but then the fees start going up pretty sharply. If you hit more than 5 false alarms, you'll have to pay $100 for each one. We've got information from many more cities across Kansas, as well as tonight's full report over on our website, ksn.com.